Hello dear students, welcome to this video. Today I'll be doing the poem entitled Vocation, written by Rabindranath Tagore. Now just a few words about Rabindranath Tagore before I start explaining the poem stanza wise. Rabindranath Tagore was born in the year 1861. He was a famous Indian educator and poet. He wrote and composed the national anthems of two countries, that is India and Bangladesh. He started writing poems at the age of 8. In 1901, he moved to Shantiniketan to start a school which is now the famous Vishwa Bharati University. He was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature for his collection of poems, Gitanjali, in the year 1913. Now, just a short introduction regarding this poem. This poem by Rabindranath Tagore reflects how a child gets fascinated to different vocation at different times according to his age and according to his surroundings. Now the word vocation itself means profession or occupation. Let me read the poem. Let me read the first stanza of the poem, after which there will be an explanation. And before I start explaining the poem, let me tell you that the word meanings are already given in your textbook. So I'll suggest you all to follow the word meanings from your textbook. Now let me read the poem first. The first stanza of the poem. Vocation by Rabindranath Tagore. When the gong sounds 10 in the morning, I walk to school by our lane. Every day I meet the hawker crying, "Bangles, crystal bangles." There is nothing to hurry him on. There is no road he must take, no place he must go to, no time when he must come home. I wish I were a hawker, spending my day in the road, crying, "Bangles, crystal bangles." Now, in the first stanza, let us take note of the time. It is morning. The poet here walks to school by their lane when the gong strikes 10 in the morning. The word gong here means a very large bell. Okay, there must have been bells somewhere on the way to school. So whenever the gong strikes 10, the poet walks to school by their lane in the morning. Now on his way to school, he meets a hawker crying, "Bangles, crystal bangles." The hawker has nothing to hurry about. He doesn't have to be tensed about where to go by this time or by that time. There is nothing for him to hurry about. He doesn't have a fixed road to follow, nor a fixed time to go. He seems to be the master of his own time, place, and directions, who decides on what to do, where to go, when to go, and when to come back. The poet expresses his wish to be a hawker so that he, like the hawker, can spend his day in the road without being bothered about by any restrictions. The poet, as a school-going boy who is so bounded by rules at home and at school, seems to be quite annoyed by all these restrictions. And so he gets, fascinated by the hawker's freedom of movement. Okay, so he expresses his desire or his wish to be a hawker. He seems to be very irritated by the monotonous lifestyle that restricts his freedom. I hope you have followed the first stanza. Now let me read the second stanza. When at 4 in the afternoon I come back from school, I can see through the gate of that house the gardener digging the ground. He does what he likes with his spade. He soils his clothes with dust. Nobody takes him to task if he gets baked in the sun or gets wet. I wish I were a gardener digging away at the garden with nobody to stop me from digging. Now let us take note of the time again. The time is noon time. That's the time when that's the time for the poet to come back from school. Now at 4, the poet returns from school in the afternoon. On his way back from school, he can see through a gate of a house a gardener digging the ground with his spade. The gardener's clothes get dirty with soil. He gets sunburned and even gets wet in the rain. But nobody scolds him or punishes him for that. Now, this particular stanza reflects the family life where parents and elders want their child to remain clean, to remain hygienic, and also disciplined, wherein the child gets annoyed. The poet, as a child, observes that adults are very lenient towards their own freedom of action. But when it comes to their children, they become very strict. Okay, they impose very strict restrictions towards their children. So the poet in this stanza, so we can see the poet getting fascinated to become a gardener in this stanza, so that even if he gets dirty, even if he works with a spade the whole day, there would be no one to scold him for that. Okay, I hope that is clear. I hope the second stanza is clear to you. Now let me read the third stanza now. Just as it gets dark in the evening and my mother sends me to bed, I can see through my open window the watchman walking up and down the lane, up and down. The lane is dark and lonely, and the street lamp stands like a giant with one red eye in its head. The watchman swings his lantern and walks with his shadow at his side, and never once goes to bed in his life. I wish I were a watchman walking the streets all night, chasing the shadows with my lantern. Now in this stanza, it is evening. Okay, it is evening time. In the evening, when it gets dark, his mother sends him to bed because it's night and it's time to go to bed. Okay, through the open window of his room, he can see the watchman walking up and down the dark and the lonely lane with his lantern. Okay, with his lantern. Now he can also see a street lamp that stands like a giant with one red eye in its head. These lines means which lines? Now look at the lines here. The lane is dark and lonely, and the street lamp stands like a giant with one red eye in its head. Okay, now these lines create a picture in our minds of a lane at night time. Okay, at night time. This literary technique is called imagery. Writers give imagery to their readers, mental pictures of sound, touch, taste, smell, and movement. Vivid imagery makes a poem more interesting. Now, seeing the watchman not bounded to time of the day, the poet gets fascinated by the watchman's profession, so that he too could walk the streets at night, chasing the shadows with his lantern. I hope the explanation is clear to you. So, the poet, through this poem, reflects how a child can get fascinated to different professions or to different vocations at different times according to his age, according to his surroundings. Now, that I have completed explaining the poem, let me quickly discuss the questions that are there in your textbook. Turn to page number 56 if you have your textbook with you. Okay. Read the lines and answer the questions that follow. Every day I meet the hawker crying bangles, crystal bangles, there is nothing to hurry on. At what time did the personer meet the hawker every day? Now the answer for this question is, the personer met the hawker every day at 10 o'clock in the morning. Question number 2, why do you think the hawker was not in a hurry? The hawker was not in a hurry because he didn't have a fixed time, place, nor directions to go. Was the personer in a hurry? How do you know? Yes, the personer was in a hurry. We know that, as he says, that as soon as the gong sounds 10 o'clock in the morning, the personer has to walk to school through the lane and has to reach the school in time. So that's how we know that he is in a hurry. Okay, now next question here. He does what he likes with his spade. He soils his clothes with dust. Nobody takes him to task if he gets baked in the sun or gets wet. Who was the personer talking about? The personer was talking about the gardener, whom he saw digging the ground through the gate of a house. Now explain the expression baked in the sun. The expression baked in the sun means to get burnt and tanned in the sun. Next question. Did the personer envy or pity the person she was speaking about? Give a reason for your answer. Yes, the personer envied the person he was speaking about. The line, I wish I were a gardener. Gardener digging away at the garden with nobody to stop me from digging. These lines depict that the personer envied the gardener. Okay, now the next question. Just as it gets dark in the evening and my mother sends me to bed, I can see through my open window the watchman walking up and down. What could he see from his window? The personer could see a watchman carrying a lantern and walking up and down. He could see the dark and the lonely lane. Number 3, he could see the street lamp that stood like a giant with one red eye in its head. So these are the 3 things that the personer could see through his window. Do you think that the personer wanted to go to bed? Why? No, the personer did not want to go to bed. As a child, the personer probably wanted to experience being outside the house at night, like the watchman, because he was still a child and had to obey his parents' instruction, so he had to go to bed. Now next question. What do you think the personer felt about the watchman's job? The personer got fascinated by the watchman's job. So that's all for the day. Thanks for watching this video.